All right, welcome back. So this is going to be the first video in my new format for the review series, as opposed to doing my daily reviews where I did a review of every single series that happened on that given day, going through the upper division, lower division, every single region. I'm instead going to be dividing them into regional-based reviews, where I do them on a weekly basis. And I've basically assigned every region to a different day of the week. The only day that I'm not going to be doing reviews is Friday because obviously there's 7 days in the week and there's only 6 regions. And if you're at all curious about what my schedule is going to be looking like, as this is the first one in this new format, I made a video yesterday talking about my new upload schedule that I'm going to be doing for the next little while, and I'll have that link down below in the description. So, starting off with Southeast Asia, as I mentioned, those reviews are going to be happening every Saturday, which is today. I'm going to be going over every single match that happened this week, both upper and lower division, taking a look at the standings after the first week, and taking a look at some stats too, like some meta heroes that are maybe popping up more than others, some of the top players and top teams and their stats, stuff like that. This is content that I was doing quite a while ago near the end of the second season, or I should say the second tour of last season, as well as after TI. I did a little review of Team Spirit's tournament. And yeah, this is kind of like my bread and butter. I like this format a lot better already than my than my previous review format. But you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below as always. So starting off with the upper division, I'm going to be going through every single match that happened this week, giving a brief review and description of what every single series went like. Sort of the same format that I was doing this past week. However, of course, now just concentrated on Southeast Asia. I'm going to be then moving on to the updated standings, which after 1 week is going to look like, not a lot of movement because obviously most of these teams have only played one series. But as we get further down the DPC, I'll be having the movements of each and every team in and out of every week. And then finally, we're going to be looking at some stats, stuff like top heroes in the meta, the most banned heroes, some teams and players with the highest GPM or XPM, and win rates overall for first pick and last pick and radiant, stuff like that. After doing that for the upper division, we're then going to be moving to the lower division and doing the exact same thing. So without further ado, getting into the first couple matches here. Debuting this upper division, we have T1 versus Tnc Predator. Heading into this, T1 is projected to be one of the top teams in this region. They, of course, were the furthest placing team from Southeast Asia at the past TI, and they've managed to hold on to their entire roster, including their coach. Not only that, but they are likely the most likely candidate for top one, at least in my opinion, whereas Tnc Predator, with the new approach that they've taken to this new season with their roster, they're definitely looking more towards the future rather than immediate success. They're not exactly a team that is projected to do super well in this season. I think they would be super satisfied if they managed to stay out of top 2 in this first tour. But again, we'll have to see. They didn't exactly get off to the best start to be super confident about that, that's for sure. And in this first series, this was a super one-sided series. T1 looking super dominant. This is a series, because it was towards the earlier part of the week, I've already actually talked about it in a previous review. So I won't get too much into detail, but this was just a very well executed series from T1 all around. All their players playing fantastic. Cuckoo, honorable mention for my MVP, but my MVP for the series ended up being 23 Savage. The amount of amazing Chronospheres he hit in that first game, where he would catch always more than just one hero, and they were always along the edge of the chrono, which meant that he was catching them in just the right amount of time so they'd all be in it. Not only that, but also since they were on the edge, giving his teammates the ability to output more damage into that chrono. So fantastic series all around for T1 and for 23 Savage. As for TNC, this was a rough start, which would not end up getting better with their next series. But before we get there, we have also Motivation versus, or Motivate Gaming, I should say, versus Execration. This was the second match of the day for this upper division. And this was, again, just a very dominant series. Again, Motivate Gaming looking like one of the top candidates for making it to the major. They are more than likely going to be making it to the major. Whereas Execration had a very solid season last time around, but they lost a lot of that core roster that they had from last tour. So a little bit worrisome for them. Motivate definitely the favorite team in here. And yeah, in game one, at 20 minutes in, there was a 15k net worth Wraith King on the side of Motivate. They sieged high ground pre-20 minutes and stole a lane of racks. Yeah, this was a ridiculously one-sided series once again. And Gotcha Boy, I had given my MVP to as well, playing mid lane for Motivate. His Ember and his Queen of Pain were fantastic. He was incredibly confident. I had talked about how in the early parts of the game, when usually a Queen of Pain is a little bit more safe with her blinks, he was just blinking in at like 3 or 4 heroes, casting all of his spells, doing a bunch of damage, making it out with just barely enough HP to survive, but buying enough time for his team to then come in and finish off all those kills. I thought he had a fantastic series, and Motivate off to a strong start. And they had 2 series this week, so we'll end up getting to that one as well. Next up, December 2nd, which was of course Thursday, we had Boom versus OB Neon. Again, another case of one of the top projected teams playing against one that didn't exactly have a roster that's looking like one of the best in the region. OB Neon again had a pretty okay season last time around, but they lost a lot of that core roster. Game 1, Boom ran an Ember TA draft in the safe lane TA. This is something we've been seeing quite a lot. I've noticed that there has been a lot of mid laners or mid lane heroes played in the safe lane lately. Shadow Fiend, Kunkka, Templar Assassin, all of these super high physical based mid lane heroes being played in the safe lane. And when they hit this power spike, the amount of damage they're able to output is really ridiculous, especially when they have the farm priority of a position 1. Templar Assassin, just as an example, is one that once she hits her Blink Deso BKB timing, it's as early as like 20 minutes. She's already out there one-shotting supports, and not a lot of drafts are able to really deal with that. And so, Boom wins this series. The second game was a little bit closer. OB Neon notably had a few highlight moments in there. They actually, because Yopaj was playing the TA in the second game on the mid lane, they actually had a handle on him for the first little while, but eventually he gets that BKB on the Templar Assassin, and they just really didn't have an answer for it throughout that game. And so OB Neon, they let game 2 slip out of their hands a little bit. Boom will take that any day of the week. They are a very good team. You cannot give them any opportunities like that. And yeah, they win this one 2-0. They get their season off to a pretty fantastic start. Finally, ending things off December 4th, so just earlier today, we had our final 2 series from Southeast Asia in the upper division at least. First off, we had Fnatic versus FNG. I think this was mainly the only upset we had in the upper division. SMG, a team that was still very highly projected. They were one of the strongest teams in that lower division in the last tour. They did lose KP, which I was expecting to have a much bigger impact on them given how well KP's been playing with Talon. But they do bring in Raging Potato, which is something huge. But Fnatic has a fantastic roster. It seems like all of the superstars, all the big name stars from the Southeast Asian region find themselves on this team. But it really just didn't really look like that roster that it should have been. Again, this is just the first series of this new tour, so no real reason to overreact, but SMG did look pretty fantastic in this series. Game 1 was very, very brawl-heavy to start. Fnatic was actually leading in kills into the mid-game, but SMG take a really, really crucial fight around the Roach Pit at around 19 minutes, and from there, the game just kind of spirals out of control. SMG playing from behind, taking a nice fight, coming in and winning that game. They steal that one. And in Game 2, Fnatic, again, a lot of early fighting, making a lot of really nice early rotations and getting nice pickoffs. They once again are leading early on, but the net lead is pretty much 0 throughout the entire time, despite the fact that they're getting these nice pickoffs and they're getting these nice fights. The net worth lead really wasn't there that entire time. It was actually favoring the side of SMG for the most part. Mid one on his Luna was just farming up a storm the entire time that the rest of his team was getting picked off. And eventually, same thing as in Game 1, there's just one crucial mid-game fight that Fnatic just isn't able to deal with this Luna anymore. And the game just kind of spirals out of control again. SMG, fantastic in those mid-games. If they tighten up that early game a little bit more, I think they'll be one of the best teams in this region. But again, if their mid-game is always going to be this good, I think they can deal with that. My MVP for the series goes to mid one. Honorable mention to Moon on his mid lane, played fantastic. He played Mirana mid in that first game, played quite well. And mid one again on his Luna, he played them in both games, and he looked fantastic. Again, good series here for SMG, good opener. And then to end off the week, we have the second series of the week for both Motivate and TNC. Motivate, of course, winning that first series against Execration. TNC losing their first one. So Motivate looking to get off to a strong 2-0 start, looking to get into that position to steal that #1 spot in the region. Whereas TNC is looking for a bit of a bounce back. Of course, going 0-2 to start the season is not what they wanted, but unfortunately, it's what they end up getting. Game 1 was very, very brawl heavy to start. Lots of early fighting. At 16 minutes in, there were already 25 kills in this game. And actually, to start off this game, TNC had a pretty fantastic start. They were wiping Motivate over and over throughout that late early game to early mid game, I would say, around the 16 to 20 minute mark. And yeah, Motivate Gaming was just kind of falling apart for a little bit. But Motivate was always leading in farm. This was another case where one team was really out killing the other one, out rotating, getting nice pickoffs, but the net worth lead really wasn't there to show for it. And eventually they just get a little sloppy with the rotations. A lot of that early game success that TNC had was just off of really good map movements, playing around each other very well, and that kind of to fall apart a little bit more around the mid to late game. Something that is not too unusual for some newer stacks, which this one is. And Motivate Gaming, again, another case where they just are falling behind quite early, and they just stay composed and they come back and they steal a win away from TNC in a game where TNC looked very, very solid in that first 15 to 20 minutes. Game 2, again, at around the 5-minute mark, all of the lanes became total brawls. It's like all at the same time they became activated. I felt really bad for the spectator, or the observer, I should say, the guy who controls the camera, because there was just stuff going on in every lane. And there's just really nice team fighting coming out from Motivate in this game. Again, it's another Pangolier with the blink roll that's making these nice rotations. It's something we've been seeing a lot this past week. This Pangolier just rushes Blink Dagger. You roll from fog and you just blink onto the target you want to go on, and it's a nice long stun to set up for the rest of your team. And yeah, this is a fantastic series for Motivate once again, coming back in game 1 and then game 2 with a very one-sided win. My MVP goes to Massa. Again, he played Pango in both of those games in the position 4 role. In the position 3 role. And again, he went 12, 3, and 25 throughout the entire series, but it wasn't necessarily his KDA that was super impressive. It was his ability to set up for his team, get those nice team fights with those blinks, and all around. Again, great series for Motivate. They go up 2-0 in the season, so very strong start, looking like one of the strongest contenders to make it to the first major. TNC, however, you know, you usually need at least, at most, just like 1 or 2 series losses to finish in that top 2, top 3 area. They're now most likely looking to just not finish bottom 2. Getting off to an 0-2 start is not something you like to see. They're going to need to get a few wins under their belt. They can only really afford to lose, I'd say, 2 more series throughout the rest of the season without, or else they're going to be at risk of getting relegated to the tier 2 scene. So again, we'll have to see how that goes. But segueing me now into the standings here. Again, Motivate Gaming up 2-0 to be in that first place spot. Because this is the first week, not a whole lot to be surprised about. It's pretty much if you won, you're in the top half. If you lost, you're in the bottom half. We have Boom, SMG, and T1 all tied for second with 1 series win. Where we have Fnatic, OB Neon, and Execration all tied for 5th with just 1 win. And again, Tnc Predator, bottom right now, 0-2. Rough start. They're looking to turn things around in this coming week. Looking now at some of the top heroes in this upper division. Again, these are all just stats for this upper division here. The strongest hero right now, Pangolier. Again, I've been praising this hero a lot lately. I was just praising it with Motivate Gaming right now. Hero is 4-1 right now in this region. There have only been 10 matches, so he's been picked in half of them in this upper division, and he's won 80% of them. So solid start for Pango. Bane, 3-0. Bane is another hero that has been very strong. Even at TI, Team Spirit was notably one of the only teams that was picking Bane throughout the entire length of the tournament, not just towards the end when teams started realizing how strong it was. And still, Bane, one of the strongest heroes, still getting picked up quite a lot by some of the top teams. He's 3-0. And Queen of Pain, 3-0 as well. Queen of Pain, a little bit more of a situational pick. You usually pick her when you know that she can dominate her lane, or if you need a mid laner that can dominate her lane, she's a great pickup. And right now, she's 3-0. Looking at the worst heroes now, Disruptor and Clockwork are both 0-3 right now. I know Disruptor is definitely not a hero that you want to be playing from behind, and it seems like a lot of these, I'd say lower tier teams in this upper division have been picking Disruptor a lot. They get off to a rough start, and then all of a sudden, this Disruptor hero just doesn't really do too much for you. It's the same kind of thing for Clockwork, a very snowball-heavy hero. If you start falling behind his Clockwork, things like your hook shot don't feel as good because they're usually running at you as opposed to you chasing them down and knocking them back with your cogs, stuff like that. And then Lifestealer and Grimstroke are both 1-3 as well. Grimstroke was one that I was a little surprised about. Lifestealer, not so much. The hero has felt a little bit underwhelming from what I've seen. Still getting picked quite a bit, but again, not having the best results. The most banned, of which there were 55 different heroes banned throughout these 10 games. Invoker and Weaver, both with 7 each. Invoker was one that I was definitely surprised about, given that you can't flex Invoker the same way that you can flex a Weaver, who has been banned in 7 out of 10 games. And then Medusa and Monkey King both getting banned 6 times. Those a little bit less of a surprise. Monkey King still being one of the strongest heroes despite his nerfs after TI-10. Not real much of a surprise there. For the Radiant and Dire win rate, Radiant actually has a slight favor of 60% win rate right now, 6 wins on 10 games. Again, it is a small sample size, but it's still something to take note of. And the first and last pick difference, this is where the thing really kicks in. Last pick has notably been rumored to be one of the strongest right now. You have the last pick in both the second and third phase of the draft. But right now, first pick has an 80% win rate in these games. going 8-2, last pick going 2-8. So in this upper division, things are kind of being turned a little bit on its head. For GPM, the team right now with the highest GPM in this upper division is Motivate. Of course, they've got 2 series under their belt, so their sample size is a little bit bigger, which means they're being a lot more consistent with this high GPM, which is something you really want to see from a top team. They have an average GPM of 2,486 gold. The highest player right now with the GPM is Mid1. Like I talked about, his series with SMG against Fnatic today, he played Luna in both of them, so that definitely helped out playing a farm-heavy hero like Luna. But he has an average GPM right now of 777. So very good start for Mid1. For XPM, the team with the highest one right now is T1 with 3,111. And the highest XPM player coming from T1 as well. Their mid laner, Carl, going with an 807 XPM right now. Highest KDA, again, going to T1 with a 9.79 average KDA, which is very, very high. And the highest player with the highest KDA is 23 Savage, again, part of T1. With a 24 KDA. That is not a pace that I'm anticipating that he's going to keep up. 24 is absurdly high, especially since they've only played 1 series. But right now, 23 Savage, again, I was praising him in that first series against TNC, and he's got the stats to back it up. Now moving on to the lower division. Again, some of these first few matches here are some that I've already covered in my review series for this past week, so I'm not going to go too in depth on. I think the only one that I actually didn't cover this week was the one that took place today, and that was Army Geniuses versus 496. But regardless, I'm still going to go through it quite quickly. Team Enigma and 496 debut this region. Again, the lower division started their week before the upper division. And game 1, they opened with a Meepo. I was super happy to see the Meepo, as that's one of my favorite heroes in all of Dota. I know it's not necessarily the most fun to watch because usually the games are very one-sided. But when you see Meepo getting picked in a patch where he has been very, very bad for like the past 2 years, ever since like the end of TI9, it was really refreshing. And despite the fact that it was a really, really good Meepo pick, like the heroes on the enemy team didn't really have all that much to do against a Meepo. It was still a pretty long game, but overall there really wasn't an opening for 496. It was just a very slow, constrictive game for Enigma. They get that nice clean win in game 1. And in game 2, 496 actually get off to a pretty early start, pretty early lead, but they just kind of fall apart in that mid game. They just kind of fed one at a time over and over. And Team Enigma, they steal game 2, so they get off to a better start than their Western European counterparts, who just played their first series today. I'm going to be having that in my review coming later this week for Western Europe. They did not look very good. Then again, they were missing Miracle in that series. Still, the Southeast Asian Enigma looking to get off to a better start than the Western European one. Next up, on December 1st, on Wednesday, we had Ragdoll versus Army Geniuses. Army Geniuses would play another series later on this week. This is a strong series for Ragdoll, very one-sided. This, of course, being Ragdoll, one of the teams coming in from the open qualifiers, and they really did not look out of place. They looked like one of the teams that was really meant to be there. They didn't look like a fluke that just made it through open quals. And there's an even start to game 1 kill-wise, but again, Ragdoll was leading in a lot of the net worth the whole time. So despite the fact that they're falling by, like the kill score is very even, Ragdoll was taking slight advantages and getting slightly better kills and taking slightly more map control with every kill that they had. It didn't seem to matter if they lost their position 5 or position 4 early, they were still taking a lot of map control, and they would end up snowballing that into a nice win. In game 2, this I had talked about. I had praised VT Faded, who is my MVP for the series, for playing Drow against Earth Spirit, Ember Spirit, Faceless Void, and Tidehunter. All heroes that just want to run at you, and as a range hero that feels super bad, but he had himself a fantastic performance on his Drow Ranger, and can't really say much else than that. Team Ragdoll really dominated this series, a very impressive one at that, and Army Geniuses got off to an 0-1 start, and they would later on look to even themselves out with a 1-1 record later on in the week. But before we get there, on December 2nd, so Thursday, we had Lil Gunn versus Interactive Philippines. Of course, Lil Gunn coming in from that upper division after getting relegated, they finished in last place. Whereas Interactive Philippines, they were coming in through the open qualifiers. And yeah, Lil Gunn really proved why they were the team in the upper division last season as opposed to not in the DPC at all. Then again, they didn't exactly have a good time at all in that upper division in the last tour, but still, This was a fantastic series and a fantastic showing from Lil Gunn. They picked a Brood in game 1 in like the worst possible Brood game ever. It was a first phase Brood, but they were playing it against Tidehunter and Timber, who both have AoE spells and a lot of damage block that just don't die to spiders, against an Ember Spirit and a Grim, who both have really good ways of clearing those spiders as well. Grimstroke at times can even one-shot the Broodmother if she's not careful. And a Monkey King, who has a nice crit stun, who can also one-shot all the spiders, as well as a long-range setup for killing that Broodmother. Probably the least of the counter out of the entire roster. But regardless, this Broodmother went like 14-1 in this game. It was a super impressive game for 4-2-3, playing on that mid Broodmother. And I mean, yeah, there was as a team that was supposed to do super well against this Brood given their draft, they had to ban it first phase in the next game, which was kind of funny. And then 4-2-3 goes back to the safe lane because, of course, he's their safe lane player, but because he's also a Brood spammer, when they picked it, he played mid. He played Faceless Void in the next game, and God, he was just so ballsy. There was at one point where he was like in between the enemy tier 1 and tier 2 in the mid lane, and he was getting hit by like 4 heroes, and his teammates bought him just enough time to time walk out, save his ass, and instead of doing that, he time walks even deeper into the enemy side to kill their Terrorblade and then die after he does that. So super well played. This was again just another nice game from Lil Gunn. 4-2-3 was my MVP in this one. Again, very impressive play from him. And yeah, Lil Gunn gets off to a good start in Interactive Philippines. This was a little bit of a rough welcome into this SEA lower division here. Immediately after that one, we have the series that I think a lot of people were really anticipating, what a lot of people are talking about now, and that is Polaris versus Talon. Talon, of course, having a very stacked roster. They came into the open qualifiers with a fantastic roster. KP, Gabby, Hyde, Makoto, Fly. Just a huge roster. But they notably haven't been gelling as well as you'd want them to see. Them. Again, it's only the start of their time playing together. These are players that haven't played together before. It's going to take them a little while to gel. It did take them 2 tries to come in through those open qualifiers. But the team that they lost to was Ragdoll, who is looking like one of the better teams in this lower division already. And yeah, Polaris pulling off an impressive win here. Game 1, pretty much every game in the series was a stomp one way or another. Game 1, Talon kind of crushed. They won the game in less than 30 minutes with a kill score of 25-5. Super impressive play. But then Game 2, Polaris snaps back and gets another really impressive, really stompy win. There was a lot of active killing. It seemed like every single time Gabby showed himself on the map as the Terror played, he was getting jumped. He just really had no space whatsoever. And Talon also very early on in the game, I think, was overrating how strong they were, or overextending a little bit early. They would try and body Polaris off of their own towers and try and take the towers and keeping them away, and they just would get killed and rotated on. So I think Talon this one maybe overestimating how strong they were. And in Game 3, very aggressive Undying and Medusa draft coming up for Polaris. It seemed like every single team fight, they would just drop this Tombstone and they would have the Medusa sit right next to it, and Talon just had no response for it. They had no way to kill this Medusa, and yeah, this ends up being another very impressive stomp from Polaris. My MVP for this one went to Lelich. In the mid lane, he played Mars in Game 1, which was notably rough. I don't think anyone in that first game for Polaris had a good game just because it was a stomp. But the rest of the series, he played Leshrac and Death Prophet. I thought he had really impressive early rotations with his Diabolic Edict, with his Exorcism, taking those early towers, pressuring the enemy cores out of their lanes. And he had so much impact in these early team fights, and I think he had a fantastic series. So Polaris wins that one 2-1. This was the only 3-game series this entire week in all of SEA. So yeah, this was a very one-sided week, to say the least. And ending things off earlier today, we had Army Geniuses and 496 having their second series of the week. 496 and Army Geniuses both losing their first series. They're both looking for a bit of a bounce back here. And 496 not getting the results they were looking for. There were good early fights at 17 minutes, and then there was this weird, on the side of 496, there's this weird play where they thought that Army Geniuses was roaching because they had an Ursa lineup, and the Storm Spirit like zapped from like the mid lane into all the way into the Roche pit, and figured out that no one was there, and all of a sudden he had used like all of his mana. He couldn't fight anymore, and the Ursa wasn't even in there, so he had to go base pretty much immediately. And Army Geniuses noticed this. They came in and fought them, and it was really that fight where they took an early fight where the Storm wasn't there. They then got the Roshan because they had the Ursa, and this game kind of just fell apart from there. So questionable play for sure from the side of 496. can't really say much else about that. There were a few opportunities for 496 throughout this game, even after that iffy fight. There were a few times when they were getting really nice pickoffs and stuff like that, but eventually, like, once Army Geniuses kind of collected themselves and got themselves all grouped up and ready to go, there was just no response. So, good game for Army Geniuses. And in game 2, this game, again, being decided pretty much just off of one fight. There was a disastrous Roshan fight on the side of 496 that just spiraled this game out of control. And yeah, Army Geniuses with an impressive win. They go and they even out their season so far to go 1-1, or their tour, I should say. Whereas 496, they now drop down to 0-2. That upper slot getting bumped up to the upper division, looking like less and less likely for 496. Again, having 2 losses already means that they have to win like all of their series for the rest of the tour for even just a chance at making it in that top 2. So right now, I think their biggest concern is just not finishing in that bottom 2 spot. But for Army Geniuses, a nice win, a nice bounce back for them. Taking a look at the updated standings, again, the top half all being teams that just won their only series this week. Those being Ragdoll, Enigma, Lil Gunn, and Polaris. At the 5th place spot, we have Army Geniuses, who again evened out their season 1-1. At 6th place, we have Interactive Philippines and Talon, tied for just 0-1 right now. And then bottom, last place right now, 8th place, we have 496, 0-2. Again, they're in desperate need of a bounce back, as there are only 7 series in every single tour. So losing 2 of them right off the bat definitely doesn't feel very good. Looking now at some stats, we actually had 11 matches in this lower division this week, again, because there was 1 series that went to best of 3. In those 11 matches, there were 54 different heroes picked, which is quite a bit more than the upper division, where there were only 45 different heroes picked. The top heroes, though, there weren't very many. A lot of the heroes that were picked in this lower division were pretty middle of the pack. They had pretty okay win rates, hovering around the 50% win rate mark. If they had more than like 3 or so games. But the top standouts actually being Clockwork, which was a little bit strange because Clockwork in the upper division was one of the worst heroes. He went 0-3 on the week, whereas in the lower division he goes 4-0. So kind of a stark difference there from the upper and lower division there. Again, one of the top heroes in the lower division, same as the upper division, Pangolier. I think this is one of the strongest heroes in the patch right now. Southeast Asia is definitely proving that, as in both of these divisions combined, the hero is 7-2 right now. That is 9 games out of 21 that he's been picked, and he's got a fantastic win rate. The worst heroes in this division being Tidehunter going 0-4 right now, and Ogre Magi going 0-3. Nothing I can really say about those heroes. I don't really see anything that was necessarily weak about them. I know a lot of people are picking Ogre Magi with these ranged carries when it comes to like Templar Assassin or Shadow Fiend that they're playing in the safe lane as opposed to mid, but I guess it didn't really work out for the lower division this week. For the most banned heroes, of which there were the same amount in the upper division, there were 55. And same thing as in the upper division, Invoker is the most banned with 8 total, Lena with 8 as well, and then Weaver and Monkey King with 7 each. Finally, now looking at some stats, the Radiant and Dire win rate is actually the opposite as in the upper division. Dire is 5-6 right now with a 45% win rate, which again is a small sample size. It's only 11 games and it's still pretty close, but still Radiant has been favored for quite a few years now, and it hasn't really been showing up here in this lower division of Southeast Asia. And again, another thing that's opposite from that upper division, in the upper division, first pick has an 80% win rate. In the lower division, has a 36% win rate. Huge difference. In the lower division, last pick has been hugely favored. It has gone 7-4 so far, so you have a very, very high chance of winning if you're on that last pick. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they level out. If the first pick win rate ends up staying as high as it is in the upper division, or if the last pick ends up staying as high as it is in the lower division, we'll have to see. For GPM, the team with the highest GPM right now is Team Enigma. They, of course, have only played 1 series, but in that series, they had an average GPM of 26.43. The player with the highest GPM right now is In Your Dream with 7.45. The highest XPM right now for a team is Lil Gunn with 31.81. The player with the highest one is, again, In Your Dream. He's going to be showing up quite a bit, which is kind of funny because he had a Meepo on his team in that first game, and yet he was still the highest XPM player on his team throughout that series. He has an XPM of 788, and highest KDA, again, Lil Gunn with a 9.04 KDA, and for players, In Your Dream, once again, with a 45 KDA. Obviously, that's going to go down throughout the next weeks. That's not a pace you can exactly keep up. But for now, yeah, he's sitting as the highest KDA by quite a large margin. That's even higher than 23 Savage. Then again, 23 Savage had likely a more competitive series than he did. But regardless, yeah, that's going to do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if there's any additional stats and stuff like that you want to see in these reviews. Again, I'm going to be doing a Southeast Asia week review every single Saturday. And if you guys don't want to miss that, feel free to subscribe. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow with my Eastern European weekly review, as well as my lower division preview for the next week.